The massive alien ship hung in space like a dark crystal cathedral, its twisted spires reaching out into the void. Inside the command center, High Arbiter Kethveros studied the glowing reports floating before him. His body was made of living crystal that pulsed with cold blue light as he read about the strange little planet called Earth. "Look at this data," Kethveros said to his companion. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "These humans went from hitting rocks together to building starships in just 10,000 years? No species has ever developed this fast." Commander Eleuthera floated beside him, her form shifting like liquid electricity. She had no solid body, just pure energy held together by ancient technology. "The computer models all say the same thing," she replied, her voice crackling like lightning. "If we let them continue growing stronger, they will threaten everything we have built." For 50,000 years, the galactic hegemony had ruled over hundreds of worlds. Every species they encountered had eventually bowed down and accepted their place in the great hierarchy. Some fought at first, but they all surrendered in the end. The hegemony's technology was too advanced, their fleets too powerful, their control too complete. But humans were different. They had survived ice ages that should have killed them. They had rebuilt their cities after wars that should have destroyed them. They had looked up at the stars and decided to reach for them, even though space was cold and empty and filled with dangers. "We cannot allow chaos to spread," Kethveros decided. "Send the ultimatum. Give them 30 days to surrender, or we will remove them from existence." On Earth, in a hastily built meeting room in Geneva, Dr. Kim Dae-ho waited nervously. He was a small man with kind eyes who had spent his life studying alien life forms. Now he was about to meet real aliens for the first time. Beside him stood Defense Minister Park Min-ho, a tall soldier with graying hair who had fought in 3 wars and never lost his calm. The holographic projector hummed to life, and suddenly the room filled with the image of the alien command ship. The 2 beings appeared before them, so strange and terrifying that several diplomats gasped. "Greetings, humans of Earth," Kethveros spoke, his crystal form gleaming. "I am High Arbiter of the Galactic Hegemony. We have been watching your species." For some time, Dr. Kim stepped forward, his hands shaking slightly. We are honored by your visit. We hope this can be the beginning of peaceful relations between our peoples." The alien's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "Peace? You misunderstand your situation. We do not negotiate with inferior species. We rule them." Commander Eleuthera's energy form flickered brighter. "Your rapid development has been noted and deemed dangerous. You will submit to our authority immediately. Accept our technological restrictions. Take your place as our newest servant species." The room fell silent. Minister Park's jaw tightened, but he remained quiet. Dr. Kim felt his heart racing. This was not the first contact scenario anyone had imagined. "You have 30 of your solar rotations to decide," Kethveros continued. "Submit to hegemony law, or face the consequences of defiance. We have destroyed entire civilizations for less than the threat you represent." The hologram showed images of dead worlds, their surfaces cracked and lifeless. Cities that had once reached toward the sky now lay in ruins. Billions of beings had lived on those planets, and now they were gone. "This is the fate of those who choose defiance," Eleuthera said coldly. "Choose wisely, humans. Your species' survival depends on your answer." The hologram faded, leaving the human delegation in stunned silence. Some of the diplomats were crying. Others sat with their heads in their hands. The weight of the decision pressed down on everyone in the room. Minister Park was the first to find his voice. He stood up slowly, his military bearing evident in every movement. "Well, Dr. Kim," he said, turning to the scientist, "what do you think our answer should be?" Dr. Kim looked around the room at the faces of his fellow humans. He thought about his daughter, who was studying engineering at university. He thought about his grandmother, who had survived the Korean War and always told him that freedom was worth any price. He thought about every human who had ever faced impossible odds and chosen to fight anyway. Kim Dae-ho straightened his shoulders and met the minister's eyes. "I think, Minister, that they've never met a species quite like us." Outside the building, the people of Earth continued their daily lives. unaware that their entire species had just been given 30 days to choose between slavery and extinction. But in that small room in Geneva, something had already been decided. The humans looked at each other and saw the same determination in every face. The galactic hegemony had made their first mistake. They had given humanity time to prepare. 3 days had passed since the aliens delivered their ultimatum, and the world had not slept. In government buildings across Earth, leaders worked around the clock, their faces grim but determined. The question was not whether to fight, but how to survive what was coming. President Cheng Sora stood before the emergency session of the United Nations, her voice carrying the weight of billions of lives. She was a small woman with steel in her spine, elected because she had never backed down from a challenge. Now, she faced the greatest challenge in human history. "Look around this room," she said, her eyes scanning the faces of world leaders. "We represent every nation, every culture, every dream that humanity has ever dared to dream. Our ancestors survived ice ages that buried continents under miles of ice. They lived through plagues that killed half the population. They rebuilt after wars that turned entire cities to ash." The Russian delegate leaned forward. "But this is different, President Cheng. These aliens have weapons we cannot even understand." Cheng Sora smiled, but it was not a happy smile. He didn't crawl out of caves and build cities by surrendering to bullies. Certainly won't start. Now, across the city, Dr. Kim Dae-ho sat in his temporary laboratory, surrounded by screens showing data about every alien species the hegemony had conquered. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but his mind was racing with discoveries that could change everything. "Computer, show me the geological data for the Vorthon homeworld," he said, rubbing his tired eyes. The screen displayed a peaceful planet with gentle seasons and stable weather. No major earthquakes, no ice ages, no asteroid impacts. Dr. Kim pulled up another file, then another. Every conquered species came from worlds that were paradise compared to Earth. "They're all the same," he whispered to himself. Stable worlds, predictable challenges, evolution without chaos. The door opened, and Admiral Lee Seung-woo entered, still wearing his uniform from the emergency defense meeting. He was a weathered man who had commanded ships in 3 different navies, and his presence filled the room with quiet authority. "Dr. Kim, what have you found?" the Admiral asked. Settling into a chair, Kim turned from his screens, excitement breaking through his exhaustion. "Every species they've conquered evolved on stable worlds. Predictable seasons, mild geological activity, few extinction events. They developed intelligence, yes, but not adaptability. Not the kind of savage creativity that comes from constantly facing annihilation." Admiral Lee leaned forward, understanding beginning to dawn in his eyes. "So we're dealing with opponents who have better technology, but less experience with chaos." "Exactly," Kim confirmed, pulling up image after image of peaceful alien worlds. "Look at this. The Zephyrians evolved on a world with no major storms. The Kefter never faced an ice age. The Korthan never had to deal with asteroid impacts or supervolcanoes." The Admiral stood and walked to the window, looking out at the bustling city below and Earth. "Earth tried to kill us every few thousand years," Kim said with a bitter laugh. "Ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, magnetic pole reversals, gamma-ray bursts. We survived because we learned to adapt, to improvise, to find solutions when there should be no solutions." "They expect us to behave rationally," Admiral Lee said slowly. "To weigh the odds and surrender," Kim nodded vigorously. "But humans have never been rational when our survival is threatened. We do impossible things because we have to. We've been doing it for 200,000 years." Within hours of Dr. Kim's briefing, the transformation began. In shipyards around the world, civilian cargo vessels were being torn apart and rebuilt. Engineers worked with welders, programmers worked with mechanics, and teachers worked alongside soldiers. The distinction between civilian and military disappeared as humanity prepared for war, Captain. Park Jin-woo watched as his cargo ship was fitted with improvised weapons. The Lucky Dragon had carried containers between ports for 15 years. Now it bristled with magnetic accelerators designed to hurl chunks of metal at enemy ships. "Are you sure this will work?" asked his chief engineer, a young woman named Lee Myung, who had volunteered to stay with the ship. No, Captain Park replied honestly. But the aliens are sure we'll surrender. Let's see who's more wrong. At the Osaka Mining Consortium, CEO, Yamamoto Kenji offered his entire fleet of asteroid-breaking ships to the defense effort. These ships are designed to crack rocks the size of buildings, he explained to the military liaisons. I imagine they'll work on alien hulls too. Even the cruise ship Ocean Paradise was being converted into a troop transport. Captain Kim Soo-jin had spent her career making sure passengers had comfortable vacations. Now she oversaw the installation of refugee pods and emergency medical facilities. The aliens gave us 30 days to surrender, she told her crew as they worked. Instead, they gave us 30 days to prepare for war. In research facilities around the world, scientists worked. With whatever they could find, Dr. Choi Hyun-sik turned his particle accelerator into a weapon prototype. Professor Yang Yoon-ji used her knowledge of volcanoes to design explosive devices. Even students contributed using their computers to run battle simulations. The aliens had made one crucial mistake. They thought humanity would calculate the odds and choose survival over freedom. But humans had never been good at accepting impossible odds. They had been defying them for 200,000 years. The space around Earth suddenly filled with massive alien ships as they dropped out of hyperspace. Commander Velthanos, of the Hegemony Fleet, looked at his tactical display with satisfaction. 37 warships, each one capable of destroying a city, hung in formation around the small blue planet. Began the occupation protocol, he ordered his crew. The humans should be broadcasting their surrender by now. But instead of surrender signals, his communication officer looked up with confusion. Sir, we're receiving music? Music? Yes, sir. Something called rock and roll on multiple frequencies. And sir, there are ships moving toward us. Elthanos turned to his main screen and saw something that made no sense. Dozens of crude human vessels were approaching his fleet. They looked like cargo ships, mining vessels, even passenger liners. Some had weapons bolted to their hulls, others seemed to have no weapons at all. Are they trying to surrender? He asked his weapons officer, shook his head. No, sir. They're attacking. Captain Hong Min-ru gripped the controls of the Defiant Prospector as her ship raced toward the alien flagship. The vessel had been a mining ship just a month ago, designed to crack asteroids for a... Now, it was humanity's first weapon of war against an alien enemy. Engine room? Give me everything you've got, she called over the intercom. Captain, we're already at maximum, came the reply from Chief Engineer Park B-Oram. Any more, and we'll blow the reactor. Then we'll blow it right into their faces, Hong Min-ru replied grimly. Her crew of 12 had all volunteered for this mission. They were miners, engineers, and cargo handlers who had never fired a shot in anger. But they all understood what was at stake. Behind them was Earth, with its 4 billion people, its cities and forests and oceans. Behind them were their families. Remember, she announced over the comm, we're not trying to win, we're trying to make them bleed. The alien ships opened fire with their energy weapons, beams of pure light that could vaporize steel. But the Defiant Prospector was not trying to avoid them. It was aimed directly at the enemy flagship like a bullet fired from a gun. The energy beams struck the ship's hull, tearing through metal and setting fires throughout the vessel. Half the crew was killed instantly, but the ship kept flying forward. The alien shields were designed to deflect other energy weapons, but they had never faced anything like this. The Defiant Prospector struck the alien flagship with the force of a small asteroid. The mining ship, built to withstand the crushing pressure of space and the heat of stellar radiation, tore through the enemy's advanced hull like paper. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from Earth. Throughout the outer system, similar scenes played out. Captain Choi Hyun-sik commanded the cargo freighter Iron Mountain, a ship that had carried containers between space stations for 20 years. Now it was fitted with its original loading cranes, massive mechanical arms designed to move heavy cargo. Target the destroyer on our port side, he ordered his crew. Get those cranes ready. The aliens fired their weapons, but Choi's ship was too small and too fast. It darted between the energy beams like a fish swimming through coral. When it reached the alien destroyer, the loading cranes extended and grabbed hold of the enemy hull. "Now rip it apart," Choi commanded. The cranes, each one capable of lifting 100 tons, began tearing chunks from the alien ship. The destroyer's crew had never faced an enemy that used industrial equipment as weapons. They tried to shake off the human ship, but the cranes held tight. Within minutes, the destroyer's hull was breached in a dozen places. Atmosphere rushed out into space as the ship broke apart. The Iron Mountain moved on to its next target. Dr. Yang Yunji had spent her life studying volcanoes and earthquakes. Her research station orbited Jupiter, where she monitored the gas giant's volcanic moon Io. When the war began, she had turned her station into a fortress. "Launch the Iron Slugs," she ordered her small crew of scientists and technicians. The magnetic accelerators she had built were designed to study meteorites by firing small objects at high speed. Now they launched chunks of iron the size of refrigerators at the approaching alien ships. And the projectiles traveled at incredible velocity too. Fast for the aliens to track or avoid. One by one, the enemy vessels were struck by the iron slugs. Their shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against simple metal moving at tremendous speed. Holes appeared in their hulls, and several ships lost power completely. The hegemony forces, trained in thousands of years of civilized warfare, found themselves facing an enemy that used garbage scows as weapons platforms and turned mining equipment into instruments of destruction. Their tactics, perfected over millennia of conquest, were useless against humans who fought with desperate creativity. Commander Belthanos watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart by primitive ships using impossible tactics. Half his vessels were destroyed or crippled, and the humans showed no sign of stopping. "Signal the retreat," he ordered, his voice shaking with disbelief. After 3 days of brutal fighting, the alien fleet limped away from Earth, leaving behind wreckage and a message that would echo through hegemony space. Humanity didn't fight like any species they had ever encountered. The news traveled faster than light across the galaxy through the hegemony's own communication networks. On hundreds of worlds, billions of beings heard the impossible story. A small planet called Earth had fought back against the mighty hegemony. Fleet and won. The overlords who had ruled for 50,000 years had been defeated by primitive ships using mining equipment as weapons. On the water world of Kefter, deep beneath the purple oceans, scientist Velthara received the transmission. In her hidden laboratory, she was an amphibious being with smooth blue skin and large eyes that had adapted to see in the dark depths of her world. For 8 centuries, her people had served the hegemony without question, building their ships and maintaining their technology. But Velthara had been preparing for this moment her entire life. "Did you hear the news from Earth?" she whispered to her assistant, a young Kefter named Zolahan, who had been helping her with secret experiments. "The humans actually fought them," Zolahan replied, his voice filled with wonder. "And they won." Velthara moved to a hidden panel in her laboratory wall and opened it to reveal dozens of small devices. "I've been working on these for 30 years, she said. "Electromagnetic pulse generators that can disable hegemony ships? I never thought we would have the courage to use them." That night, explosions rocked the hegemony shipyard in orbit around Kefter. The amphibious workers, inspired by humanity's example, had used Velthara's devices to sabotage their own facilities. Ships that had been under construction for decades were destroyed in minutes. Back on Earth, Dr. Kim Daeho sat in his expanded laboratory, now connected to a vast network of communication equipment. His team had managed to establish contact with rebel groups across the galaxy using captured hegemony technology. "Dr. Kim, we're receiving a transmission from the Kefter system," his assistant reported. The holographic display showed Velthara's blue face, her large eyes shining with determination. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am scientist Velthara of Kefter. Never believed resistance was possible until your species showed us that even the mighty can bleed." Kim leaned forward, excited by this first contact with an alien rebel. "What can you tell us about hegemony weaknesses?" Velthara replied. We have built their ships for centuries. We know every system, every weakness, and we are not the only ones who wish to be free. Within days, Admiral Lee Seung-woo found himself coordinating with rebel cells across dozens of worlds. His temporary headquarters buzzed with activity as messages poured in from across the galaxy. The Zephyrians have provided us with complete intelligence about hegemony ship movements, reported Communications Officer Park Myung. They've been tracking fleet positions for years, waiting for someone to lead a rebellion. The Zephyrians were an insectoid species with compound eyes and rapid movements. They had been conquered 3,000 years ago, but their hive-mind intelligence made them excellent spies. They had been watching and waiting, memorizing every detail of their oppressors' operations. The silicon-based Korthan have sent us defensive shield technology, added another officer. They've been hiding advanced weapons for millennia, buried in their crystal cities. Admiral Lee studied the flood of information with amazement. All these species were waiting for someone to make the first move. It seems we did more than win a battle, Kim observed. We started a revolution. On Earth, engineer Bae Soo-jin worked 18-hour days in her laboratory, trying to combine human engineering with alien technology. Her team had recovered weapons and shield generators from the destroyed hegemony ships, and she was determined to understand how they worked. The problem is compatibility, she explained to her team of engineers and scientists. Their technology is designed to work perfectly for thousands of years without maintenance. Ours is designed to be repaired with whatever we can find. Her assistant, a young engineer named Cho Hun-sol, held up a hybrid device that combined a hegemony energy cell with human control systems. What if we don't try to make them work together perfectly? What if we just make them work well enough? Bae Soo-jin smiled. They built their technology to last forever. We build ours to be fixed with spare parts and determination. Weapons that emerged from her laboratory were crude by hegemony standards, but they were effective. Human ships could now fire energy beams alongside their kinetic weapons, and their shields could deflect at least some enemy fire. More importantly, when the hybrid systems broke down, they could be repaired by any engineer with basic tools and creativity. Across the galaxy, the rebellion spread like fire through dry grass. The Velteron used their industrial robots to attack hegemony facilities. The Morphic Collective, beings who could change their shape, infiltrated enemy ships and sabotaged them from within. The Stellar Nomads who lived in space habitats began raiding hegemony supply convoys. Each species contributed what they could to the growing resistance. The hegemony, which had ruled through fear and superior technology for millennia, suddenly found themselves facing enemies on every front. But the most dangerous thing the rebels shared was not weapons or intelligence. It was something humanity had given them, without meaning to, the belief that freedom was worth any price, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The galaxy had learned humanity's most dangerous export, and there was no way to stop it from spreading. The final armada of the galactic hegemony emerged from hyperspace like a storm of death. Thousands of warships, each one larger than a city, surrounded Earth in a sphere of destruction. At their center flew the Eternal Dominion, the Crystalline, flagship that had never known defeat in 50,000 years of conquest. High Arbiter Kethveros stood in his command chamber, his crystal body pulsing with cold anger. "This ends today," he declared to his officers. "We will make an example of this planet that will be remembered for 10,000 years. But as his fleet prepared to fire, something unexpected happened. Ships began appearing around Earth, but they were not human vessels. Bioships from Kefter, their living hulls rippling with organic weapons, took position alongside human destroyers. Swarms of Zephyrian fighters, moving like angry insects, buzzed between the larger ships. Crystal vessels from the Korthan worlds floated like floating mountains of living stone. "What is this?" Kethveros demanded, his voice cracking with disbelief. His tactical officer reported, "We're detecting rebel fleets in 17 different star systems. They're attacking our supply bases and shipyards simultaneously." The galaxy had risen in rebellion, and Earth was no longer alone. Admiral Lee Seung-woo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable. humanity's first true warship. It had been built from the wreckage of the first battle, combining human engineering with technology from a dozen different species. The ship was not beautiful, but it was strong, and it carried the hopes of billions of beings who had never dared to dream of freedom. Lol ships. This is Admiral Lee, announced over the communication network that now connected rebel fleets across the galaxy. Today we don't just fight for Earth, we fight for every species that was told to kneel. Beside him, Dr. Kim Dae-ho coordinated with rebel scientists across the galaxy. His screens showed battle reports from worlds he had never heard of, fought by beings he had never seen. But they were all united by the same desperate hope. The Morphic Collective has disabled the hegemony base at Rigel, he reported. The stellar nomads have cut off their supply lines to the outer rim. We're not just fighting one battle anymore. We're fighting everywhere at once. The battle began with a fury that shook the foundations of space itself. The hegemony fleet fired their energy weapons, beams of pure destruction that could vaporize mountains. But the rebel ships did not fight like the civilized species the hegemony had conquered before. Captain Hong Soo-jin, sister of the engineer who had died in the first battle, commanded a group of converted mining ships. Remember what my sister always said, she called to her fleet. Their technology is perfect, but perfect things break when you hit them with rocks. Her ships launched clouds of metal debris at the enemy fleet, simple chunks of iron and steel that the hegemonies advanced. Shields could not stop. The elegant alien warships, designed to deflect energy weapons, were torn apart by crude projectiles moving at incredible speed. The Kefter bioships released living weapons, creatures that had been bred in the depths of their oceans to eat metal and electronics. The creatures swarmed over the hegemony vessels, dissolving their hulls with acid and short-circuiting their systems with bioelectric pulses. Engineer Bae Soo-jin's hybrid weapons proved devastatingly effective against hegemony shields. The combined human-alien technology was crude and unpredictable, but it worked in ways the enemy had never encountered. Energy beams that should have been deflected punched through advanced armor. Kinetic weapons found weak points that should not have existed. The battle raged across multiple star systems as rebel fleets attacked hegemony forces throughout the galaxy. But the crucial moment came when Dr. Kim Dae-ho led a boarding party onto the Eternal Dominion itself. The control networks are in the central core, explained Velthera, the Kefter scientist who had joined the assault team. If we can disable them, the entire hegemony fleet will lose coordination. The team fought their way through corridors of living crystal, facing automated defenses that had protected the ship for millennia. Dr. Kim carried a device that combined human explosives with alien technology, a crude but effective weapon that could disrupt the ship's control systems. This is for every species that was forced to bow, he said as he activated the device. The explosion sent shockwaves through the ship's crystal structure. Control networks that had coordinated the hegemonies. Forces for 50,000 years flickered and died. Across the galaxy, hegemony ships suddenly found themselves isolated, unable to communicate or coordinate their attacks. High Arbiter Kethros felt his ship shudder as the control networks failed. His crystalline form flickered with defeat as he realized that his perfect empire was crumbling around him. You have doomed the galaxy to chaos, he transmitted to Earth in a final act of defiance. President Chang Sora, now leader of the Free Galactic Alliance, stood in the command center on Earth, surrounded by representatives from dozens of species. Her response was broadcast across the galaxy for all to hear. No, she said firmly. We've given it the chance to be free. The hegemony's age of domination ended not with submission, but with the galaxy's greatest lesson. Some spirits are simply too wild to be tamed. The perfect order that had ruled for millennia was replaced by something chaotic and unpredictable, but also something beautiful. For the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy was free.